Good morning. Today I'm going to be covering imagery. Some of you may have heard of imagery before. How many of you have heard of imagery? Okay, a couple of you. Okay, it's okay if you haven't. I know this may be a new concept to some of you, and those of you that have already heard of it, you can learn a little bit more about it or think of it in a different way. Okay, I will say this for those of you who have not maybe heard of it before. I guarantee you, if you've read a book, you've experienced imagery. Imagery is in everything that you read. Because everything we read, particularly in fiction, gives you a certain image. It gives you a certain sense as you read it, right? Imagery doesn't have to be an image. It can just appeal to your senses, right? So let's talk about a definition of imagery. Imagery is certain words or phrases that happen within a text that give you a certain image, a picture, or sense of what's going on in the story or narrative. Okay? So, usually, this happens in sentences that we like. Usually, sentences that we like create certain images and give us certain feelings. Otherwise, we wouldn't like them in the first place. Right? That being the case, I'm going to read from you a text that I like. In just a brief section, I handed it out to you when you came in, so make sure you follow along. I want you to remember that we talked about senses, right? So you have hearing, taste, touch, smell. You have sound, right? Your five senses. See which of those five senses this is appealing to, right? And you can do that through imagery in multiple ways. It could be used through metaphor, through onomatopoeia, through simile, right? Through figurative language, through personification. These are all literary elements. But literary elements are used to create imagery in a text. So I want you to think about two things. I want you to think about what sense is the author appealing to here. And the author is David Foster Wallace. What senses are he appealing to? And the other thing I want you to think about is what literary devices is he using as we read through this text. This is set in a cafeteria. 133 kids and 13 assorted staff sitting down at supper time. The ETA dining hall taking most of the first floor of West House. A sort of airy, atrium-like commons, broad and knotty pine paneled. The east wall hugely fenestrated and columns running the length of the room its center, with ceiling fans high overhead, circulating the rich and slightly sour smell of bulk prepared food. The oceanic sound of 20 different tables' conversation. The flat clink of utensils on plates. Much chewing. The clank and tinkle of the dishwasher's conveyor belt behind the tray bus window, with the sign saying, "Your mother does not live here. Bus your tray." The muffled shouts of kitchen workers in steam. So that was just one sentence, just to let you know. Yeah. Do you think that this appeals to all five senses? Let's look. Can you guys find maybe, how does this appeal to your smell, your sense of smell? Give me an example. Right, he talks about the slightly sour smell, okay? What about your sight? Does it appeal to your sight in any sort of way? Okay, so yes, it does. It describes the atrium, right? It describes what it looks like in the cafeteria. Okay, what about touch? Okay, yes, that's a good example. It talks about the steam, right? So this can maybe even use multiple senses at once, right? That's what imagery does. It draws you into a text. Now, I want to give you an example of a literary device it uses. Let's look at this section. The oceanic sound of 20 different tables' conversation. Now, what literary device do you think that is? Does anyone know? Nobody? That's a personification. Can a conversation really be oceanic? Can it really be like an ocean? That really makes it sound very loud, right? That's the sound of an ocean, right? But it's not really that way. It's being personified to be like that. Okay, so imagery, it's not just creating an image. I mean, of course it can do that in a text, but it's also about using a literary device to make something more vivid, to give it a certain feeling, a certain sense, right? So go ahead and get out the book that we've been reading in class, and turn to a sentence that you like, okay? I'm going to want you to read, or answer, 3 questions I'm going to have on this note card that I'm passing out to you, okay? So now that you have your note cards, I want you to answer these 3 questions that I have up on the board. What do you like about this sentence? Okay? What is it that appeals to you? What do you like about it? Okay? I want you to think about that. That's your first question. What literary devices is it using? So, it appeals to you in some way, but usually it appeals to you, or it's interesting, because of some sort of literary device that's going on. Okay, and we talked about them. If you want to write them down, they're onomatopoeia, metaphor, personification, figurative language. All right, and I'll come up with some more if you feel like your sentence is difficult or it's hard for you to identify. Just raise your hand and I can come help you figure out which one it's using. Right, and then the last question: why is your sentence using imagery? Okay, in this one I would say it's more descriptive, right? But is it always going to be descriptive? No. You can use imagery for a number of different reasons. This is what you're going to have to figure out on your own, right? Why do authors use imagery? And why is the author using imagery in that particular sentence that you identified? Okay, so go ahead and get started on that. Please raise your hand if you do have any questions. I'll come by and help you.